And we made contact, and I opened up with that baby, and I learned a lesson really quickly. And it made sense, when it happened, because we always teach, you got to take the machine gun out.
Yeah.
Shift your fire to wherever that machine gun is. Take that joker out.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And all of a sudden, everybody's shooting at
all of a
me
sudden you were
on
the
the
most
other
popular.
side.
You were the most popular
thinking,
target out
whoa.
there.
This stuff is just coming in on me, and it's just eating everything up. And I'm getting behind a tree and keeping my head around. I'm shooting the machine gun around the side of the tree, but I can't, really see what I'm doing. But I couldn't take my head around there; they'd take it all. And so after that mission, that's enough of that. I'm not carrying one again. Now, when we if we put two teams together to make what we call a spike team, where we were going in with the intent of engaging the enemy and not running, then we would carry, two M60s at least. And then, when you carry an M60, everybody on the team has to carry M60 ammo. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got at least 100-round belt with them, plus the machine gun is carrying all that extra weight. So, it doesn't just weight down the machine gun. It's everybody on the team now is still going to carry all those 40-millimeter grenades with them for the M79. You still got to carry that. You still got to carry your extra claymores. You got to carry all your mission equipment. And now I'm giving you another 15, 20 pounds of machine gun ammo to carry along with you. There's only 5 or 6 of you. The weight just goes up so fast that we didn't do it.
Yeah, and I guess now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, the fact that you guys were generally in closed terrain, pretty tight. It wasn't like you needed massive cover fire to cover ground you didn't have to fire and maneuver because you take 3 steps and all of a sudden the enemy can't see you anymore.
Yeah.
So that makes a little bit of sense too. What was your op tempo like? We're talking about these missions. How often were you guys going out?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, and that it varied by team, and in the 12 months that I was there, I went out 18 times, which was way beyond what an officer led team would do. I don't know that the other teams were going out that frequently, in that shorter period. Mm-hmm. The paper that you signed when you joined SOG said, I volunteer to go anywhere, do anything for 6 months or 6 missions, whichever comes first.
Got it.
At the end of the 6 missions or the 6 months, I've got to say I volunteer to do it some more. So you had this, little safety valve in there to give you a chance to kind of wake up and say, this is not a smart thing to do. and here's my ticket to do something different.
Right. Well, that's sort of like the bombers in World War II that had to do 25 missions over Europe, and if they did 25, then they could go and do something else, go home.
Right.
Most of them didn't make it. But, yeah, that's pretty telling when they say that you only have to complete 6 missions. That doesn't sound like a big deal. You must be thinking to yourself, if they only want me to do 6 of these things, they got to be pretty hairy.
If I only have to go out 6 times in 6 months, I've got a good deal. The grunts are going out there every day and fighting, or doing something or being exposed. And so you had that. And remember that SOG missions, a SOG mission really is an out-of-country mission. As Tilt says, across the fence. You go into another country. When you see the casualties, the KIAs of SOG, at least in the beginning, they all said South Vietnam. Mm. That's not where they were killed. Mm-hmm. So you were going out, but in between those missions, you might do something in country. Like Lynn Black, one of Tilt's big buddies, they were on the same team and stuff for a while. Lynn was, just a unbelievable 1-0, and he and I, kind of became friends. And in between missions, we would do things like, why don't we take some of our guys tonight and let's go over the Marble Mountain, set up an ambush. I guarantee you we'll catch somebody in it. And let's go do that. What about tomorrow afternoon? You want to take some of our guys? Let's go search some of the caves in Marble Mountain. Those jokers are in there. We just have to find them. You know, so we would do a lot of things like that, just for fun, so to speak. You know, because, you know, compared to a regular mission, I mean, this is a no-brainer. You just go over there and you shoot some people. You know, you catch them in the cave and hose them down.
Compared to 40 miles deep into Cambodia alone.
And when we can be back in time for lunch. I mean, let's go do this. So, and then you had, Marble Mountain, the 2 combat outposts. Teams would rotate up there. You had to keep, 2 teams up there all the time. So in between missions, you might go up there for a week or 2 weeks at a time, and then come back down and start mission prep, for another mission to go back out. So it wasn't like you were just sitting around in between missions. You were always doing something. Plus you were doing a lot of training and preparation for the next mission that you had coming up. So you stayed pretty busy.
How long would it take you to brief a mission when you were going on?
We might start with the initial briefing as a day. Briefing, this is what we're going to go to do, is where we're going to go do it. And depending on what the mission was, I might say, okay, so we're going to go over to a place that was called Monkey Mountain. We're going over to Monkey Mountain because it's a good place over there for us to rehearse the actual mission, the raid, the ambush, whatever it was we were going to do. We can go over there and get in some, realistic rehearsals. So we might go spend a few days over there just doing that. And while we're there, we rehearse our RON procedures, putting on the claymores, where did we put them. I would put the team in a different place every night so that you had to, let's look at the terrain we're in now. What's the most likely approaches? What do we need to defend the claymores? Where do we put the toe poppers? What's our avenue of egress? How do we get out of here? If they come at us from this direction or this direction, where do we go? And where are the closest LZs that we're going to go to, and how do we get there? Everybody needs to know that. Whether you're American or Indig, you got to know where it is. You got to know how to get there. And so we would do the training like that, but particularly mission specific for what we're coming up on. And then as you got closer, you get much more specific, and then when you got to the launch site, you would have the mission briefing where your air assets would be there. So the pilots who were going to fly your insertion, the gunship pilots, Air Force representative for the A-1Es that were going to be there, the F-4s that were going to be there. So you would have the big briefing there, and everybody would agree on everything and make sure you had all the call signs and everything down, and contingency actions. The covey, I haven't said anything about him. We'd always have a covey out there with a forward air controller that we could talk to and could look down and tell us what he was seeing. Might be able to see the bad guys coming to us or whatever. He could get more assets for us. So it was a big deal. I mean, because you might have 4 gunships, 2 to 4 A-1E Sky Raiders, 2 to 4 F-4s. You've got covey. You've got the insertion ships that you're going in with. You've got trailing ships in case those get shot down that are flying empty, so they can drop down and pick you up. Sometimes you might have a ship with the medics in it because you're expecting casualties. So it could be a big air show sometimes going in. But if you're going to North Vietnam, you had to have the F-4s. It was just required for the mission. Some of the others, Laos, Cambodia, you could go without the F-4s and you just use the A-1E Sky Raiders. But if you're going North Vietnam, you better have the F-4s with you because they could send a MiG down there after you if they wanted to. So you had to worry about air cover as well as hitting big targets. And an F-4, it can get your attention real fast. And the Sky Raiders, do too, because they fly low, slow, and they're carrying their own weight in ordnance, and they can put it right next to you. If you tell them where you want it, that 20 millimeter is hitting 10 feet over there, and right along beside you, or whatever the ordnance they're carrying, you can get your attention. I mean, those jokers are good.
All right, so how many missions did you do with RT Alabama?
4.
And then after that, did you get the up check from deck to become a 1-0?
Yeah. So I had gotten that. I mean, I had it before we did the 4, but we knew that FOB1 was going to close down. And when it closed down, the teams were going to get scattered around. So I knew I would get a team, but I would get one somewhere else. So we just stayed together, for those 4 missions. And then when I moved to Da Nang, to CCN, then I took over RT Michigan. And RT Michigan was the one that had, I don't remember who the 1-0 had been on that one, but Eldon Bargewell was the 1-1 on that one. So I took over that, and the guys.
And he was an enlisted guy at the time.
He was Spec 4, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he was already a legend.
Well, he already had
a good reputation.
So we got along well because I had asked about him because I didn't.
Right.
He was a different camp. I didn't know about him. So I had asked about him, and everybody I talked to said, "Man, this guy is good." He
was asking everyone else about you too.
He was asking about me, and he told me, and I said, "Well, what did they tell you?" And he said, "Well, I talked to, Sergeant Johns, and it was impressive because he said, and I had total faith in him. He said, Thompson is the only lieutenant I've ever met that you could give a map and compass to, and he could tell you where he was. And he could navigate you to any place you wanted to go." And he said, "You just don't find lieutenants like that." Mm-hmm. So Bargewell said that was good enough for him if I knew where we were.
Yeah. So, isn't it surprising that would be a skill that's so needed? And that people didn't actually have it sometimes. It's crazy. And these days, kids are relying on the GPS, and they forget about some of those land nav skills. And it always cracked me up because they're to a point where they really rely on the GPS. They don't know their pace count. And, I'd be walking on a training operation, and say, okay, just not even thinking about looking at a GPS because I did a map study and know where we're at. And those younger guys, they just don't have this. Not all of them, of course. We still get some guys that are great at it, but it's just a different time. So you take over this new team. You got Bargewell, which I'm sure you heard me talking about it with Tilt, but he was when I was a young officer. I just got picked up for commission, and I went to Germany, and he was the guy in charge over there. And my boss, who was an outstanding guy, who was a great mentor to me, but he would kind of tell me, about the old man. He'd say, Bargewell said this and Bargewell said that, so that was pretty neat for me to make this connection. And here you are sitting here that actually he was your 1-1.
Yeah, and he was very knowledgeable, very good. And I was impressed with him right from the beginning. And I thought, this guy's good. Mm-hmm. And when we went out on an operation, he was just cool and calm. When the shooting started, he was good. But he had experience. He was at Quezon with the team there, the siege of Quezon. He was there. Where they just got hammered for several weeks there. He was there with that Special Forces detachment. He had recruited some of the team members that we had, and this was a yard team. Mm-hmm. They all liked him. They all had a lot of respect for him. and he was a smart guy. I just never thought then, where he would end up. I figured, if he